Record. Here we are. It's Dave and it's Paul and it's an Englishman, an Irishman, and a load of bollocks. And this is our Christmas podcast, Paul. We're already at that point where we do seasonal kind of festive podcasts. How do you feel about
Yeah, it's like The Office, The Office Christmas special, or The Only Fools and Horses Christmas special.
that?
This is our Christmas special. Yeah,
Let's make it a good one.
yeah. Well, we are a pair of Scrooges deep down. Scrooge was a
Uh,
realist, so
Scrooge was a realist, yeah, he was. So, what are we, 3 days from Christmas now? I'm going to ask
yeah,
you about your Christmas plans soon, Paul.
yeah, it's
I'll just
okay.
tell you what my plans are. My plan is about 12 hours from now, I'll be in hospital going for surgery on my knee. So that's going to be my Christmas laid up in bed with a big bandage on my knee. So yeah,
There's a
that's me.
surgeon that doesn't like you out there.
Oh, there's a lot of surgeons who don't like me. I think they're sick of me, the amount of operations I've had now, Paul.
Yeah, yeah,
I blame bloody football for that, though. You
yeah.
know,
That's what you've something common with Paul McGrath, dodgy knee.
dodgy knee and absolute quality ability as well. No, I'm only joking.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I'm only joking. So that's me. Anyway, how about yourself, Paul? What have you got planned?
It'd be Christmas with the kids. I mean, it is just for kids, really, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, yeah,
Christmas,
yeah.
I mean, it's a time to be overindulgent and a time of gluttony, but it's a lovely time of year, really, isn't it? We could be serious and say it's over commercialized, which it is, and maybe
Mhm.
the Christian aspect of it is somewhat gone, which is a shame, really. But kids bring me back down to earth with Christmas because I said, it's a magical time of the year for them,
Yeah,
and I'm seeing Christmas through the eyes and lens of my children. I can see
amazing.
the
Yeah,
real inquisitive. It's like two more sleep, three more sleeps.
yeah,
We have a little advent calendar every morning. um, you can see the excitement, the build up, and
yeah,
we're then part of that as well. And we've
yeah, yeah.
went to a Christmas show last week with the kids, and it was just really innocent and beautiful,
Oh,
and I loved, actually, myself and Lisa. We asked Grace, our little 5-year-old, and we just said we didn't know what to expect when we asked the question of what's Christmas all about, Grace, and she just said perfectly and innocently, it's Jesus' birthday and we celebrate Christmas. That was her initial answer. And
yeah,
then she said, and we get presents off Santa if we're good. And then Dylan chipped in, my 7-year-old, and that was his initial reaction. So myself and Lisa both looked at each other and we went, that's lovely. It's lovely that kids still have that Christmas spirit and know the true meaning of Christmas, because a lot of adults forget that true meaning. Some adults want to change the very essence of Christmas, and they don't want to even say Christmas. They want to call it the festive season or the festive
yeah.
period. But be with the kids on Christmas Day. So yeah, looking forward to it. That's what it's all about, especially after last year. It's all about family, isn't it?
Well, Paul, I was going to say to you, Happy Winterval or Merry Wokemas, but it is Christmas, isn't it?
Yeah,
It is
yeah,
Christmas, and we will not let it
yeah,
be taken from us by those who wish to destroy. We
yeah,
talk about this a lot, don't we?
yeah,
We've talked about it in our various podcasts about the very destructive elements in society, and one way that a society can really attack itself from within. It's always from within, or the most insidious destructive elements are from within, is to kind of destroy childhood and is to destroy
yeah,
religious traditions, and both of
yeah,
those are focused around Christmas, aren't they? So it always warms the cockles of my heart to to hear about a traditional family Christmas, to hear about children
yeah,
still, loving the magic of Father Christmas and getting the presents, but
yeah,
also, as you talked about, Grace and Dylan there, they're, they understand the true story and the true meaning of Christmas, don't they? And I think that,
yeah,
as you said there, we become distant from that as we grow, or
yeah,
many of us do, when it becomes
yeah,
about. Don't get me wrong, I love going to the pub, I love having a party,
yeah.
I love
Of
eating
course,
as much
we're
food as I
not.
can.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're not holy Joes here either.
but no, we're not holy joes now, and I think that's the good thing about what we're trying to do here, Paul, isn't it? It's a bit of balance between respect for
Yeah,
tradition and
yeah,
respect for
yeah,
anything else
yeah.
as well,
Well,
really. So
my
yeah,
and
after you.
tradition is so important with Christmas, because I did often think of a tradition that my mother does every Christmas Eve, and my granny did it. And it's a tradition that goes back centuries in Ireland. And it's a religious tradition, which is every Christmas, my mother lights a candle and she puts it on the windowsill. And the idea behind that is it goes back to the penal times in Ireland in the 17 and 1800s, when it was a time when the Christian faith was illegal. So a lot of priests used to go underground, and then the idea of that is they used to create hedge schools, so they teach the Christian doctrine, underground, and it'd be like literally in a field, and they'd be teaching the Christian faith, Catholic faith. And the idea of lighting the candle at the window was back to the penal times in Ireland. It was to show priests who were on the run, who were underground, who would be killed because of their faith, they were Catholic priests, that it's an open home. You can come in here. You can have safe shelter, okay? And the tradition is carried on to modern times, which is lighting the candle means you're allowing the Holy Spirit to come into the house. It's an open house. It's a house of faith, and it's a lovely tradition, lighting the candle on Christmas Eve. And as I said, it goes back to the penal times, to allow the priests on the run come in, that it was an open home, and it's carried on to modern times. And that's a lovely ancient Irish tradition that I hope it never goes away, And it's also a reflection on our history as well, that people of the cloth and people who had Catholic faith in this country were killed and murdered because of their faith, So, and then there's another tradition in Ireland we have. I don't know if you ever heard of the Wren Boys. There's on St. Stephen's Day. So you'll probably know this. You obviously call 26th of December Boxing Day. I think it's because of Queen Victoria, isn't it? You can tell me what they call it Boxing Day, but is it? But we call the 26th of December St. Stephen's Day, and St. Stephen was one of the first Christian martyrs. But anyway, 26th December. It used to be tradition around Ireland, but it's most predominantly down in Dingle in County Kerry. It's a day of the Wren. It's a pre-Christian pagan festival. And men dress up as Wren boys, and they dress up in straw suits, and they have beaks, and they have masks, and they play music and instruments. And that's an Irish tradition that's gone back centuries as well. The day of the Wren. So I love these Christmas traditions. And as we say, in the modern world, globalists don't like tradition, as we know well, and people who hate nationalism don't like tradition. So may they continue.
Oh, brilliant, Paul. And it's very reassuring in many ways that two traditions you talked about there, particularly the first one, which was literally about light, the light of a candle. If there's anything that symbolizes hope, togetherness, unity, it's the light of a candle, isn't it? That's why it has been so prominent particularly as you say, in the Catholic faith. Now, I didn't know about the precedent for that, particularly the aspect about priests on the run in Ireland, under threat, and if they saw the light, the candle burning in the window, that was an open invitation to come in and share in that faith. It's an incredible symbolic kind of kind of like symbolic like sign of how those traditions in your country are still there, aren't they? Despite the incessant and relentless attacks, particularly in the last 20 years. That is something that is to be celebrated, I think, because you talked about globalism there and the attacks on nationalism, attacks on patriotism, attacks on traditions, attacks on customs and cultures and all the rest of it. Because I see that in my own country as well. But I think if anything, it's probably been even worse in Ireland. So you telling me those stories now that children from certain families are still engaged in the Christian festival that is Christmas, and the symbolism behind it is really, really uplifting to me. But I've got a question to ask though.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to ask, what are Dylan and Grace leaving out for Father Christmas and his reindeer? I need to know. I need to know that they're going to be well sustained.
Well, it is an Irish tradition again. We do leave out a can of Guinness, and a biscuit. None of this milk malarkey. He's going to have a tough night, so he needs something to
sustain him.
He needs something. yeah, to keep them going. And the good old carrot. And again, it's lovely, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
Timmy's with them.
oh God,
I
yeah,
do love it, you know.
yeah,
Brings you back to reality, you know, takes the
yeah.
cobwebs off. It's good,
It
it's good for the
it does.
soul. It really is. This is food for the soul, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
It really is.
Seeing life
Yeah.
through the lens of or through the reality actually of like actually watching children and how they interact with life and their experiences and the
Yeah.
events of life
Do
and
you
the
have
occasions of life is so uplifting for me, you know, and it's so educational as well and so inspiring, and you
yeah.
know it's lovely.
Do you have midnight mass over in England on Christmas Eve?
So
Or maybe it's an Irish thing.
it's
Midnight
still,
mass.
yeah, it still technically exists, and it's still a thing. But
Yeah.
as the years have gone by, what I'd say still back in the 80s, when I was growing
Yeah.
up, midnight mass was still a thing, and I think it was
Yeah.
An Irish custom, you know, particularly
Yeah.
in Liverpool, which is a very Irish orientated city, very Catholic
Of
city.
course.
But
Second
as the
capital.
time's gone on, the midnight mass has moved from midnight to 11 to 10 to 9 to 8.
Yeah, it's same
You
here.
got
Yeah.
midnight mass at
Yeah.
like, you know, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Now it's not like that, but it's you have midnight mass about
Yeah.
7, 8 o'clock now. Yeah. But I think you can still
Yeah.
find churches in Liverpool where you can get a
Yeah.
traditional midnight mass. Yeah.
Yeah. I've
Are
I've
you
memories
going
going into the
yourself, are you?
yeah, well I have memories as a child going into the cathedral in Mullingar for midnight mass. And I think it used to be 12 o'clock, obviously. But as you say, I think it's 11 now, I think it's 10. Me and Lisa were actually talking about because we would like to go to mass this Christmas, but with 4 kids in tow and 4 kids under 7, it can become very
Logistically
annoying,
difficult.
let's be honest. And I could be quite blasphemous in the church if the kids act up. Sorry. So there's actually a kids mass at 4 o'clock in the day on Christmas Eve, and
All right. Okay. Yeah.
they're calling it a mass. So I'm seeing that as free reign, so the kids can be active wherever they will. Look, the kids are fine; they're very good
Yeah.
mannered,
Yeah.
but kids are curious. They point. They'll be looking at the crib. They'll be commenting on everything. So yeah, how about yourself? We'd probably go to that. Did you go to mass at Christmas, or what way would you
Well,
do?
I used to be. I was going to ask you a question there about. Can I ask you a quick question first, just to pick up on what you said there? I was going to ask you,
Yeah.
does God like a little bit of kind of low level blasphemy? And by that I mean, does he like people who are not holier than thou, but also who are not godless, who are somewhere in the middle, who might say every now and again, "Oh fucking hell, God." Does he like? Does God
Je-
like that kind of
Je-
attitude? What do you think, Paul?
Jesus
Like,
was
does
a
God
rebel,
like
wasn't
people?
he?
Yeah. What do you think?
Jesus was probably the ultimate rebel, wasn't he? He
Yeah.
he lived amongst the lepers and the women of the night, you know, Mary Magdalene. He went into the tough neighborhoods. He did his thing. He said his piece. He led by example. You know, I think Jesus was the true. He wouldn't want anyone that's clean cut, and why would you be?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
he probably likes a bit of an edge. He liked a glass of wine as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Brilliant. Isn't that's a whole
yeah,
podcast to explore in itself, isn't it? I think.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um.
But he was, if you could be serious, but he was, wasn't he? Like he
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
anarchist in ways. He went against the system, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
He went against the Romans. Um, but yeah, yeah, it's an interesting take on it. Yeah.
It's in it. Yeah. You asked me
What do you
about
think?
my. What do I think about that? Well, you talked about. I think you touched on the lepers there, didn't you? One of the things that is.
Yeah.
I, I think I'm like you, Paul, in many ways, in that I have a relationship with God. It can sometimes be very, very tenuous and strained, and it is at the moment. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not so much of a advocate of religion,
Yeah.
but God for me it's about symbolism,
Yeah.
representation, stories, precedent,
Yeah.
meaning, purpose,
Yeah.
inspiration. And I think so the
Yeah.
words of the Bible, really. I
Yeah.
often ask myself, why is the Bible still the most popular and most
Yeah.
well-read book in the world? And the reason for that is that
Mm,
because the deep truth in the Bible
mm,
is something that is has never been surpassed. So
yeah.
to answer your question, I, I believe in God I have a difficult relationship with God, but I will never ever abandon the idea that God's in my heart, that God's in me, God's around me. But one of the things that, as I said, then the reason why I don't like religion is because I see religion as just another institution.
Organized religion,
An organized religion, which is ultimately godless.
It gets corrupted,
It's godless and soulless, and religion isn't above that. In fact, it's you could argue that religion, particularly the Catholic Church, is more open to corruption than anything else when you look at what's going on. But I don't want to go into that. But what I'm saying is that one of the stories from the Bible is about the leper and how Jesus treated the lepers. Now, he was unafraid, he was sympathetic, he was open to socializing with them, he wanted to heal them, he wanted to understand them. Now, can anybody honestly say that I was brought up a Catholic, albeit a loose Catholic? Well, it was never driven into me. My parents never kind of imposed any religious or political ideology on me, but I was brought up in the Catholic Church, and I remember the story of the lepers. So when the COVID thing happened with the social distancing and the locking people away at first, and then the denigration of anybody who was deemed to be not of the right, treated like lepers. That's not God to me. And I went to church. I did a video from a YouTube channel where a lot of other kind of like biblical teachings that I understand in my own simple way, because I'm not a man of religion, but how I understand the Bible. It's the modern kind of manifestations and tellings of many of the principles of what I think Jesus was have been abandoned, and the best example of that was since the COVID era. Does that make sense, Paul?
Yeah. I think you lost me there for literally a few
just
seconds.
A second or two, Anyway, what do you think about that?
The church, brilliant point, and I would be the same as well. First of all, go back to church during COVID. The church they organize religion, the Catholic Church, who are totally out of touch. We're pushing the jab, we're masked up, and I couldn't relate to that. But for me, faith is a personal journey. It's a personal thing. That for me, I have quiet faith, and it is just quiet faith, where I don't go to mass every weekend, but I pass a church a lot of the time. I quietly go in when there's no one in there with the kids, and I light a candle. I walk around the church with the kids. I kind of talk to them about the concept of religion and God. I'm proud to say I wear a miraculous medal around my neck. I wear a scapular. And these are things maybe stemming from my childhood. And maybe it's a sense of, maybe it's symbolic, maybe it's a placebo effect. It makes me feel good, and it keeps me, in my mind, safe. But again, I go back to people in my life, my parents, my grandparents, who had good values and morals, and they had Satan must be listening to us, Dave. He keeps like getting.
You're back now. It's okay. You're back.
It's okay. Cut this out. Satan must be cusses tonight.
He's got his finger on the pulse, hasn't he?
But he's like, shut up, lads, shut up, lads.
Yeah, you're saying too much.
And I grew up in a household where we're saying too much. Yeah, let's go back to Christmas and the money and the overindulgence side, But just going back to the very start of what we were talking about, the idea of the woke crowd. I'm going to change direction here, if that's okay. The way the woke crowd always try and change the name of Christmas, and I mean, it really gets on their nerves, and they try and do it every year. Another thing they do every year, the woke crowd do, they get themselves in a hissy fit, is the best song of Christmas in my view is obviously the Pogues and Kirsty MacColl, Fairy Tale in New York. And the woke crowd have been on this for a few years, haven't they? You know, the famous, you scumbag, you maggot, you cheap, lousy fag.
Yeah. You were talking about the Pogues, Paul?
Yeah, How far did I get into it before I was stopped?
Yeah,
Was it that I mentioned the faggot bit?
you did. Yeah, that was where it cut out again. Someone watching us, isn't there?
But they want crowds to get into a hissy fit, and they try and well, they've actually have, because if you actually play the song on Alexa, it doesn't mention the word, does it? And I think that's a great song, because it's a true reflection on what Christmas is all about. Because I think I said to you before that Christmas isn't just a happy time. That what I love about that song and what it portrays is a time where people do overindulge at Christmas. People do drink a lot at Christmas. People are angry at Christmas. Couples argue. Families argue. People are grieving at Christmas. It can be a very dark period. And that song is a sense of darkness, and there's a sense of hope as well.
Yeah.
You know, maybe over here, when it comes to Christmas, with Christmas gatherings, it all just comes out all at once. That's why I love that song. But yeah, the woke crowd every year get into a little hissy fit about that one word, faggot. I mean, Mark Knopfler has that word, faggot. He mentions that word a few times in Money for Nothing.
That's right.
And,
he
don't
does.
seem to
Yeah,
go after him, but and that's a great song. It's
probably only a
fantastic,
matter of
but
time, isn't it?
yeah, they can't help themselves.
No,
They can't help themselves trying to destroy, you know, music, or if it's politics or tradition. They're always they are cultural Marxists. They can't help themselves.
well, I think as well, when it comes down to it, the most base element of, you call it cultural Marxism, I've called it that, postmodernism thinking, communism, whatever you want to call wokeism. It's always the same. The same aim is to, its most base point is to destroy and smash apart the meaning of words, because words are what we use, obviously, to communicate with ourselves, and we do to communicate with ourselves, an internal monologue, to communicate with other people. Words are conversation, and words give meaning and a sense of some unifying objective truth to the world as well. So if you want to destroy the world, and it is my argument that these communists, cultural Marxists, I don't know what you want to call them, but the purveyors of destruction and suffering, however, whatever you want to call them, they want to see the world burn, and the best way to do that is to make everybody get to a place where they do not know what words mean anymore. They don't know what words to use anymore, and at the same time, they destroy the institutions. They corrupt language. They destabilize society. Very, very, very insidious. So that what you're talking about there, a Christmas song which has been fabled for the last couple of decades, the Pogues, which tells the story of Christmas, about a traditional Irish or British Christmas, as you say, which involves all the drinking and maybe the fighting and the dark side as well as the light side. Well, they don't like that because they're utopians and they want to destroy anything that's not in their utopian image. So that's my view on that.
Soul.
No soul. That's all. No.
No soul. These people. We're dealing with soulless individuals,
godless,
who
atheistic, destructive people who. So, on that note, Paul, what's the counterpoint to that? I thought we'd finish on some positives. What do you think? You can start on that, because I'm not feeling very positive, to be honest.
I can veer off a little bit here. I got engaged on Christmas Eve in China.
Right, okay. Was that to a China woman, was it, or was that to Lisa?
Sorry?
Was that to a China woman, or was it to Lisa?
yeah. I'm like I'm the male Elizabeth Taylor, yeah. And God, I wouldn't want to be in China now. I mean, that was 2012/2013. That was less than 10 years ago. My God, the world has changed. It was like I was looking back at pictures last night of China when we were there. Obviously I was younger. There was an innocence, really, and that was only 10 years ago. We were living in Guizhou province, which still remains, I'm sure it's the same now, one of the poorest provinces in China. It's a rural agricultural province. And the area we were in was predominantly an area that had an indigenous ethnic group called the Miao people. Yeah, I did say meow, like a cat.
Yeah.
The MIAO people. and they are very famous for their customs and their traditions and their festivals and their dance. The women are very striking. That even day to day they wear. The only way I could describe it is multicolored embroidered costumes, and they've copious amounts of jewelry on them as well. And the children wear these beautiful multicolored embroidered clothes as well. So they embraced us and we embraced them. You know, I don't speak a word of Chinese, and obviously they didn't speak English. So we were in this rural area. Anyway, I said to myself, this is a perfect opportunity to get engaged to Lisa. I am an old romantic. I thought to myself, if I'm going to buy a ring, the best place to buy a ring is China, because I can haggle and get a lot of money off it, which I did.
Nice.
Lisa won't be listening. It's okay. It's okay. And so Christmas Eve went up. What's to say? One man's mountain is another man's hill. Well, for me, it was a mountain, but it was probably just a hill in China. We went up a hill, and there was loads of meow villages and temples, and there was snakes. We did see snakes, and I popped the question, and Lisa said yes. And part of our story was the meow people. They couldn't, as I said, they couldn't speak any English, or likewise we couldn't speak Chinese. But they saw we were happy, and Lisa had a ring, and they brought us. They treated us to an engagement party, which was fabulous, and that was beautiful. So when I think of Christmas, I do think of that memory. But yeah, on a positive note, look, after the last year, there is a sense of pride of where we started at the start, where I started in 2022, where I am now. This time last year, lockdowns were galore. The face cloths were still galore. The government were recommending boosters, you know, an armful of the harmful, you know, and they didn't break us, did they, Dave? They didn't break us, you know, and we're still here fighting strong. One of your subscribers, and I think he's a friend of yours. You might, I can't think of his name. Is it Ben?
Yeah, Ben. Yeah.
He said something like, I think he said in your Telegram channel. He said it's not about non-compliance. It's no longer non-compliance. You know, for me, non-compliance was something we did in 2020, 2021. It's self-reliance.
Yeah.
Do our own thing now.
Yeah.
You know, it's not non-compliance. It's self-reliance. We've
like
only one track at this life, you know, and we embrace it. We enjoy the small pleasures in this life, and we don't let the bastards get us down. You know, onwards and upwards. You know. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I first of all, the story about your Christmas engagement there. We were talking earlier on, weren't we, on WhatsApp about how 2013, 10 years ago, it seems like only yesterday, Paul. And in so many ways, it was part of the modern era, but in so like the era that we live in now. But in so many ways, it was like bygone times. It was a completely different epoch and a different time, more innocent, as you say. So that's the first thing. The meow people sound great. They sounded like, you know, and how many people have had that? It must have been quite a spiritual experience to, you know, propose to Lisa. You know, in a place, a far-flung place where, you know, you're with the ancient tribes there who you couldn't speak their language, you know, they couldn't speak your language, but you were connected in a kind of a spiritual way around the, you know, the sanctity of marriage, really. Yeah.
The Han Chinese call the meow people sorry for interrupting. They call them the fairies of China, because there's a mystique about them. So yeah, you're right about it sounds corny, but it was a wonderful spiritual experience. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
sorry.
Not at all. Yeah. No, not at all. I love that story. And you were talking as well about, I know we said we've got 7 minutes left. We said we'd have a little look back on the year. We'll probably do a New Year podcast where we'll do a proper look back. But when we think back to last Christmas, the world was still in the grip of, well, the world is now still in the grip of insanity. It is. It just shifts and changes. But back then it really, really was. I remember people at that time, let's not forget, people obsessed about doing lateral flow tests a couple of times a day. They were obsessed. Oh, people were queuing outside doctor surgeries, and they were still going to, they were still going to the testing centres because they were terrified of the Omicron variant. Now, we were already 2 years into it at that point. We'd figured out for about 18, probably 20 months, it was a load of absolute bollocks. And we were still looking and seeing this utter madness. Now, so what's happened this year? I think there was two things at the start of the year. There was Novak Djokovic. That opened a lot of people's eyes that he couldn't play in the Australian Open. There was also that doctor, can't remember his name, Steve something, I think he was called, the intensive care doctor, who said...
Oh, in the NHS,
Yeah, so that I think those two things really opened up a tidal wave of kind of awakening, really. But we're at the point now where the world's in some kind of like amnesia. It's suffering from amnesia. It's in an inertia. It's like a rabbit stuck in the headlights. Dark night of the soul. A lot of people are going through it. So, but it's Christmas, so we're going to finish on a positive. So for me, the positives now are set against the context of I'm very, very worried about where society is at the moment. What are the positives? The positives are, as you say there, we are indefatigable. We're undefeatable. We are invincible because we just keep getting up. But it does change from non-compliance to self-reliance, and there does come a point where we need to go, do you know what? We've done enough for you group of people now. Now we have enough respect for ourselves, and also we need to be able to care for ourselves enough and those around us to put our energy into our own lives now, despite anything that's going on in the world. And I think probably Christmas is a good point to recognize that and to try to pave the way forward. Whatever that may look like,
Like, as you say, this time last year in Ireland, we had medical fascism in this country. We had medical apartheid. We had the slave passport in situ this time last year. And it's an uncomfortable truth for many people, but there was full-blown discrimination in this country. And my anger has led to, I feel nothing for these people anymore. For people who still toe the line.
Back again, Paul.
But are we back on again, are we?
You were saying about the people, the fascists who showed their hand, who showed who they really were.
And I don't feel anything for these people anymore. I don't even feel anger towards them. I just feel emptiness towards them. I don't really kind of care about them. And the thing is, they're in a constant state of confusion and bewilderment, and there's cognitive dissonance still remains for them, and the gaslighting continues for them. Now, it might be less so with COVID, but the gaslighting and cognitive dissonance remains for them for climate change, for Ukraine. So I just think, oh, do you know what? I don't need these people in my life. So I've kind of done a spring cleaning in the last few months where I try to get rid of toxic people in my life. I try to get rid of toxicity in my life, full stop. And it goes back to the idea of family, keeping things simple. In many ways, Dave, the true rebel is, and I'm not calling myself a rebel, you're not calling yourself a rebel, far from it, I'm not grandiose, but it's people who just quietly go about business, say no grand gestures, but when fascism or communism, whatever you want to, comes knocking your door, you know what to do, and you just do it. While the other people are still in that loop of confusion and bewilderment, as I said. So onwards and upwards. It's like Neil Young has that song, and he's a real sellout, Neil Young. But that rocking in the free world, but we'll rock in our newly formed free world for 2023. 2023, Dave, will we?
Well, do you know what, Paul? I'll tell you what, I've got some New Year's resolutions. We've got 1 minute 30 to go now. So, 2023, I'm going to follow the science, Paul. I'm going to unfurl the Ukrainian flag. I'm gonna check my white privilege. I'm gonna donate some money to climate change reparations. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm on record now saying that, aren't I? And I think what we need to also remember, isn't it, is that sarcasm, irony, humour, and just taking the piss out of the tyrants and the sycophants who follow the tyrants and the idiots who believe it all is the best way, isn't it?
We have to take the piss.
Take the piss. We'll keep
Yeah.
doing that. That's our New Year's resolution on Englishman, Irishman, and a load of bollocks,
Yeah.
maybe. We'll keep taking the piss. Get some
Yeah.
t-shirts made. I don't know.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
The
you have a
heat is
great
something.
Christmas, Paul.
What?
You have a great Christmas.
Yeah, likewise. And sorry for a few interruptions there.
Oh no, not at all. I'm only ending it just because we've got no more time left. But we'll be back between Christmas and New Year when we talk about something
Yeah.
else. So yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
definitely. Yeah.
Thanks
Take care,
everyone for
everyone.
listening.
Yeah.
Cheers, Paul.
Yeah. Thanks.
Merry Christmas.
Likewise.
Bye bye.